Hey guys, welcome to the Hustle Faithfully podcast where determination meets devotion.
Find us on all streaming platforms at www.hustlefaithfully.com. Well, today we're going to be talking about the tension of transition.
I want to ask a question. Have any of you all had a difficult transition in your life? Any kind of transition? It could be jobs, it could be marriage, it could be a relational transition, it could be any type of transition. That's kind of the basis of what we wanted to talk about today. These type of transitions where there's tension in transition. And we want to use some personal references in this discussion. So, it's not just us asking you, have you gone through it, but it's us sharing that we've also gone through it.
Absolutely. And so in this episode, we may get a little bit vulnerable and you may see some of the insides of our lives instead of just being the podcast producers. You're going to see some internal things going on with us personally. So, Ricardo, do you want to start or do you want me to start with a transition that I've gone through or you've gone through?
Well, man, there's so many in my mind. Like, honestly, I just wouldn't start.
Okay.
I mean, because I'm sitting here thinking, like, do I want to start or do I not want to start? But I've had a lot of difficult transitions in my life. Now, mind you, I've had a lot of transitions, but they haven't just been transitions, they've been difficult transitions. In my youth, I had some really difficult transitions from one way of living life, in my youth with my grandparents to transitioning out of their home when my mother was really young. And when she had me, so she wasn't ready maturity wise to, to deal with having kids.
Right.
So this is on the tail end of, my sister being killed. And so there's all kinds of things was upended in a way where we went from being in this household with my grandparents and my aunts and uncles and so forth to transitioning from there into a new space with my mom. And that was some really difficult adjustments there because, all of a sudden I'm thrust into, even though I'm young, I'm kind of thrust into a different role now because in that home, my grandfather was there. Two of my uncles were there, and then one had, I think he may have been in prison. I don't know. And I had my one of my aunts was there, I believe. I believe that's what was going on. But went from being just a kid in the house to moving out, and then I'm the eldest in the house, and I'm the only male in the house. And then trying to now find my footing, even though I'm young, I now got to step up, into a different role because I'm the only male in the home. And even though now the responsibilities within the home exceed my expertise because of my age and my experience, I now got to try to figure this out. So there's some tension in this transition between being in this one home, just being the kid that had dealt with a lot of things at that time. A lot of stuff had happened in that time. And there's an emotional and mental transition that I had to go through that happened because of some of the things that went on in my youth at that time that affected me adversely until I became an adult. But there's all these transitions mentally, emotionally. Now, spatially, I'm not in the same space, and I don't have the same responsibilities. So I'm struggling with trying to figure out how to be the thing that I've never been in a situation that I've never been in with responsibilities that I've never had, So there's all this stuff happening at one time that has to happen right now, while still dealing with the emotion, the raw emotion of having my sister just recently having been killed. So I'm like really struggling with this whole thing. So that was some real difficulty. That's an early transition. I mean, obviously there's more as we go on with the podcast, but that was an early experience with transition that was really, really, really difficult. And I don't know that I handled it well at all, especially at that age.
What age range were you?
6. Maybe.
5 or 6?
Yeah, somewhere in there, I think, man.
So you're thrust from being out of diapers for just a few years.
Right.
Maybe you were still in them. I don't know.
Well, I wasn't in them, but I'm still with them.
To being the big boy on campus, being the big man on campus at 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah, it like kind of happened to be, just happened to be, because I had a young mother who's now working, and she's now on her own for the first time. With her kids on her own for the first time, she's still dealing with the loss of a child while trying to find her way in this situation, and me now trying to figure my way out through this situation, being the oldest in there.
And best of your memory, seeing as it has been several years, how did you go through that transition? How did you, I'm going to use the word man up to a 5 or 6 year old, which is not a really good term to use, but how did you essentially, quote unquote, man up at that point?
I don't know that I did. I spent a lot of years during that time. Honestly, I just started dealing with some issues with porn early in that time period. I think I was exposed to porn in that, somewhere within that time period. I was videos and magazines, and that went on for some issues with porn. That went on for the next 30 some odd years of dealing with some sort of porn issue, and this hyper sexualization that took place, and of course the things that happened after that subsequently that led to more of it. But that right there, and then trying to kind of finding a place to belong without feeling like I belong anywhere where we were living, is how I tried to deal with it. Just kind of like finding distractions to keep you from focusing on the things that are around you, that's in front of you.
Right.
So find a way to distract myself. And I remember being in Head Start, or kindergarten. Man, it's been so long ago. And getting in trouble because in my little mind, it was innocent. Sitting at the bottom of the slide, waiting on this girl. I think I like this little girl, and this young age, I like this girl. I remember her name too. I watching, she was sliding down the slide in a white dress, and I'm trying to look under it. Like, seriously.
This is at 5 or 6 years old?
Yes, sir. Already, and there was some things going on the bus at that age that I'm already like, there's already little stuff happening, for you, some of you that think your kids at that young age, especially nowadays, have no sense of awareness when it comes to sex.
They do.
I tell you, even back in the early 80s, I did. So I know now with all the technologies, they do. But there was a lot of things happening at that time, man, that kind of drew my attention, that kind of not helped me with the transition, but kind of numbed me to some of the things that was going on, because I could always do these other things to kind of take my focus. So I don't know if there was ever a manning up. I was still, up until my early 20s, when I first got married at 21, still trying to figure out what man up means in a sense, so I don't think I ever got it right.
Gotcha. I think a lot of 21-year-olds nowadays are still trying to figure out what man up means. Yeah. So you made a comment about how you would essentially deflect.
Yeah.
I believe that many times the issue is not the true issue.
Right.
Meaning, you say, I'm struggling with this, but okay, you're struggling with that. Yes. But what's the underlying root? What's the underlying cause?
Right.
Because once you pull that root out, then it really dies, instead of just chopping away at the very top and then it'll grow back. How did you come to the realization? How long did it take you to realize that the issues that you thought you were facing, that you were facing head on, were not the true issues, not the real things that you needed to be truly fighting against?
Oh, man.
That it goes so much deeper.
Honestly, John, some of those things, I don't think I realized the depth of it until it's happened within the last 6 or 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you can know that there's some issues without knowing how deep
Right.
they go.
Right.
You know, it's like, I'm pawing at the surface. Thinking that if I just paw at the surface a bit, I can get to the roots, and then because I see roots, I think I'm as deep as I need to go.
Yeah. Right.
Well, I saw signs of what the root cause was without knowing and really realizing the depth of what I was looking at. Because to me it was just here. I see roots, so I mean that's got to be it. That wasn't it.
Mm-hmm.
It just let me know that there were roots there beneath the canopy of what I was doing. Like I see the canopy, I see the tree, I see the trunk, but there are roots beneath all of this and all this dirt in your life. There's some roots under there. So I didn't realize how deep they were, and I wasn't willing to dig any deeper because I felt like, hey, I found it.
Going deeper on that,
Mm-hmm.
did you feel like I found the roots, or did you subconsciously and consciously know that, okay, I found the roots, yet it goes deeper, but I'm really truly afraid to face how much deeper it may go?
I was a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
That was some of the acknowledgement that there may be more here than what I see, but there's also a lack of awareness that there was more there than what I see.
Right.
Because it's one of those things where I see it, I think there's something else, but I feel like this is it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to just focus on this and end up going through a cycle for the next however many decades. Well, the decades were spent when there was an initial acknowledgement that there was something wrong, but identifying that there was a root cause to it didn't happen until the last 6-7 years or so. But initially I knew there was something. I just never exposed the root.
Right.
And then when I exposed the root, I just didn't go deep enough to see the depth of what it was. So that was I think there was a little bit of both in there.
Mm-hmm. I've done one-on-one counseling or mentorship with many people. And I have, clearly I'm not going to call out by names by any stretch of the imagination, yet I worked with a couple that I've known for 10 years, 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
We've been close, very, very close. I mean, our friendships lasted 10 or 12 years. I mean, most don't.
Yeah.
And I remember in talking with them, I found out some things they were willing to open up.
Right.
And really move past that friend situation and get into some of the roots of issues. And I will never forget, in talking with them, he was making some comments, and I was flabbergasted. I was completely blown away with what was being said. And I'm like, I had no idea, none. Because, I know him and his wife, I know his kids, I know his mom, all that.
Right.
And just hearing some of the stuff and some of the upbringing. And these people are some of the kindest, most gentle, most loving people that you'll ever meet in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yet to see some of the crap that they came through.
Right.
And we only dealt with him and his stuff. And there was one point, and only one point, where he made a comment about the stuff that she's going through. Mm-hmm. We never did make it that far before we just kind of had to stop. But I recall one session that we did. I was using some techniques, and I essentially took him back and put him in the time of facing it. Right. Like sitting across from the person, the people, the situations. And I remember he had a tear roll down his eye. He said, "Jonathan, I can't do this right now." Well, I kept leading him along, and then he opened up.
Yeah.
And just to see how he went off on this person that you would think that that relationship was just, it was great, but it wasn't. And when you start peeling away, we always hear an onion, you peel away at layers. That's when you start getting the freedom to really break through. And I can only imagine, especially a situation like that, because it's very clearly a closely guarded secret. There's things like that that you just don't talk about to everybody. You have to have the level of comfort. You have to have the level of trust, all that. I can only imagine going that deep and being that vulnerable to people. Because here's the thing. I don't care if you've, in that situation, I don't care if you've been friends for 10 years. When you get into that type of stuff, sometimes you never know how they're going to react.
No, you don't.
You never know if, oh, that was your life, that happened to you, that I'm out. I'm not going to be associated with that. Now, the thing is, when people are out because of something like that, it's probably best that they're out anyway. It's just get with people that are going to support you and love you no matter what. When you really look at that transition, he's been dealing with that for, he's been dealing with that for probably 35, 40 years. But yet it's one of those types of things of how many people even know about this. Clearly his wife knows about it. And I even asked him about his mom. And he said she won't acknowledge it. He said she's kind of turned a blind eye to all that. And she doesn't believe that any of it existed. How much harder is that for somebody, you know? So you never know what people are going through and what transitions they're going through, because every one of us are going through a transition in life at every moment of our being. At every moment that we're alive, we're going through some sort of transition. They're not all challenging. Some of them are very, very good. Some of them are challenging. So when you work through that, you said you really never did man up, but you saw the effects that it had on you as a man. I mean, clearly men, we're visual creatures. So even at 5 years old, you were trying to peek up the dress.
I was.
Doesn't sound like you were trying. Sounded like you were succeeding.
Yeah, I got in trouble for it, as I should have.
Right.
You know? But you think about this. Now, there is, like we talked about, there's many different types of transitions. You know, not all of them are difficult. A lot of them, you know, we go through without knowing we've gone through it until there's some fruit from this transition that we've gone through. Like, man, you know, like there's this realization that, you know, I'm not where I used to be, you know, because it just happens naturally as you grow. But there's some things that happens where these transitions, they always, depending on the depth of the type of transition you're in, they're going to shape and inform your character in some way. You know, the transition I went through early, it shaped my character and informed my character and my decisions because of it. You know, because the things that I was going through, I had to become someone to deal with what I was going through. And whoever I became, I now had to make decisions out of the person I had become to deal with. It's like a coping mechanism to deal with this transition that I'm in, you know, because I don't know how to deal with it unless I become the thing that I think is necessary without having someone informing me what it looks like to get through this. And of course, these transitions, they should help you grow. But when you're misinformed and then you have misidentity in the midst of transition, you tend to not grow, to hinder growth, because you get stuck in a place of trying to be something and someone and do things that you were never meant to do or be or become. So I found myself in that place. Spent a lot of years walking out and living in that misidentity, a false identity, because of my whole life, my adolescent life up into my teens and so forth, was really one big coping mechanism, is what it became. I was just coping with my life, with moments of clarity where I enjoyed my life. But in other times, I was medicating myself in different ways, So it was just, so I went through a long, extended transition and a lot of tension to get from the old mindset to a new mindset, where I realized that that thing that I was at that time, it was only that in that moment that helped me in that moment to get through it, because I had to do something or become something or someone to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
But then as I moved on to life, that thing that helped me then hindered me later, because I never learned to become someone.
Mm-hmm.
I was something in a moment, but never became someone in order to grow and be who I need to be. It was just, it's a state of being versus becoming. It's one of the things I talked about with my wife the other day. We were talking about someone who's practicing. It's like practicing a roar because you want to be a lion. So I practice roaring. The thing about a lion is a lion doesn't have to practice roaring. It comes with who he is.
Right.
Like he is the thing that roars. So you trying to be something that roars, and you think you can accomplish it by practicing that thing, isn't the same as becoming the thing that does that. So for me, it was, I was in that state, just trying to figure out what I needed to be in that moment in order to just get through this, and it's like practicing to roar without ever becoming the thing that actually roars.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent a lot of time figuring out or trying to do something or be something without ever becoming anything in particular. I was a little bit of everything without being anything.
When did you consciously realize that, and what did you do to become instead of just existing?
When did I realize that? Probably in depth when I was in Louisiana, in lockup.
Okay.
That's probably when I did, because at that moment, now there was some sense of self I'm pretty sure there were times in my teenage years and in early 20s where there was some things that I was aware of. But I'm talking about me sitting here now thinking back about how consciously aware I was of my state. When my daughter was born, that caused me to look at things a bit differently, because I was aware of the, not having my father in my life the way I wanted. So I wanted to be in her life differently. I was aware of some of the effects of not having a certain thing. So I wanted to be that for her. So there was some sense of awareness in that. My transition from being a young man that was, in college at that time or before that, and, just kind of dating, to being someone who was a husband and now a father that was having to take care of a home in a way that I'd never seen.
Mm-hmm.
That was a different transition. So there was some sense of awareness there that I'm lacking something here. But a keen sense of awareness didn't take place until I was on my knees in lockup and crying out to God, saying that I don't love my life. I don't like the person that I am. And if you're real, you'll have to reveal yourself to me. I've heard about you, heard people talk about you. I don't know how to do this. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to live this way anymore. And at that time, I asked him to reveal himself to me. And if he didn't, then I was in my mind, I was going to be the best sinner that ever lived. And when I say this, I was going to, womanizing, the drugs, alcohol, all this stuff. When I got an opportunity to do it, I was going to do it the best that I possibly could. And that was the reality for me. Like if I don't get something that gives me some sense of self, some real identity, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to medicate myself the rest of my life. I'm going to drink, smoke, and sleep with every woman that I can. And as crazy as it sounds, there was a little bit of that going on as I came up. I was doing a lot of that already, And so when that happened and I cried out, there was an experience that I had where the Lord revealed himself to me in a way that completely changed my life from that point to now. Like in a way I'd never experienced. There was an instant tension between the person that I was and I thought I thought I was, and the person I had been, and the one now that I was seeing that I could be. There was instant tension, because I didn't want that life anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all I'd known. I want this life. I had no clue what it was, what it looked like, or how to do it. So there was instant tension right there in that transition for me. And so that was the first time I can honestly say that I felt hope, like real hope. Not like you just say you have hope, but I'm talking about the first time I saw a light that said, you know what, you have hope. You don't have to live like this anymore. And that changed my life at that moment.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. This has been a very intriguing story, a very intriguing episode. We'll pick back up again next week with part 2 of Tension of Transition. You dropped a lot on us today. I appreciate it. This is going to be very deep. Because like we said at the beginning, we're going to get personal with everybody viewing and everybody listening.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to learn a whole lot about you and I through this.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you personally, you know me, we're both open books. So
Mm-hmm.
people that know us know a lot about our life. I mean, we all have things that people don't know about,
Right.
But as we progress with this theory, we'll obviously give everybody ways to see how to transition around those challenges.
Yeah.
Because, we'll sprinkle some good transitions in, but this is really going to be more about the challenging ones and how to get past it, how to move forward, how to get above it.
Yeah.
So how would you sum up in the last minute and a half exactly how to transition or to progress with the transitions that you have talked about here today?
Well, I'm going to tell you, for me, the only way that I found to deal with the things that I was going through was the way that I told you, where I met God for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, other people will say, well, that doesn't work, and it didn't work for me. But I'm going to tell you right now, I'm alive right now and able to sit here and talk on this mic because of that interaction. Because if I hadn't had it, I can promise you I'd be dead. This is not speculative. I'd be dead right now because I know the type of things that I was doing and the stuff that I was involved in. I would not be here. I say that with absolute certainty. My life has been saved because I had to seek an external source that was greater than my own or myself. And for me, it was me finding out that me being a creation, that there was a real creator that knitted me and formed me for a certain function that I never figured out. I didn't know I was formed for a specific function. I was just kind of living life by default, not by design. And when I realized I was created intentionally, for a purpose, with purpose, by design, by a designer, that changed everything for me. And so for me, myself, I can say that my transition was made better when I began to hear from the one that created me, tell me what it is that I'm to do, or how I was created, and that I'm better than how I've lived. And there's a standard that has been created and set for me that I've been living substandard, and I don't have to live substandard anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to walk around feeling this deficit of these voids that I've had. Like my natural father wasn't a bad man at all. He wasn't in any way. And I don't know what I would give to have an opportunity to have a conversation with him now, since he's passed. But I had always viewed that relationship with my natural father in such a negative light because I wanted so much more and I got a lot less than I wanted. And when I found out there was my heavenly father was a much better father in ways that I never knew my natural father to be. He was like, I found some things about my heavenly father I wished my natural father was for me in that same way. And so when I met God in that way, in that moment, that helped my life be framed in a way where it was frameless before. You know, at any point in time, any outside word, any outside activity, any kind of event could change the way the frame looked, the picture looked, because there was no frame. So at any moment I could be or become or act or do anything. Once there was a frame, just any old thing couldn't come in.
Right.
It gave me definition. So for me and for the people watching, I'm a Christian. Jonathan is a Christian. I'm going to tell you what helped me was to know that I was made with a purpose, that I have a design. And the only way to know what this design was intended for was to consult the designer. And my life has had definition since that time. And all the things that I would normally do, where I would just go off the reservation in one direction or the other, my life has been even guardrails, where I may bounce off one side or the other, but I stayed within this framework that gave my life direction. You know, so I would just say, if you're seeking an identity, you're seeking a way to come out of this transition that you've been in a way where it gives you some sort of enlightenment or some sort of opportunity to grow, or it gives you hope for the first time in your life, I would say find a relationship with God. That's my suggestion.
Well, there you have it, from the words of Ricardo McNealy.
Longer than a minute and a half. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Find a relationship with God. Join us again next week for part 2 of Tension of Transition here on the Hustle Faithfully podcast. Until then, have a blessed and fantastic week.
See you guys later.